McDonald's hiring platform was just breached with a super simple password, and then it gave away the personal data of 64 million people. Also in your hacking news roundup, why selling your passwords to some guy in a bar is a bad idea, and a spyware app gets hacked. But first, McHire is the recruitment platform used by McDonald's to hire new workers. If you fancy yourself a McDonald's crew member, here you can search for jobs. But if you want to apply for one, there's no application form to fill out, no phone number to call, and God forbid have to talk to an actual human. Instead, there's Olivia, McDonald's own AI chatbot that itself conducts the first stage of the interview process. But Olivia can be a bit useless. You don't have to look far to find examples of Olivia ghosting applicants or just responding with smiley faces when it gets confused. This caught the attention of security researchers Sam Curry and Ian Carroll, two white hat hackers who decided to start poking around. After going through the Olivia interview process, they were made to do a personality test, a strange experience where you're asked if you can relate to the escapades of some demented vampire smurf. Here's a fun example. No overtime? Damn, I wonder how I should answer this question if I'm in desperate need of a job. Anyway, after completing this exercise in corporate torture, our researchers' application was stuck awaiting human review. In the meantime, they tried prompt injecting Olivia, but that didn't get them very far, so they expanded the scope of their investigation to the login page of the McHire platform. The researchers thought they'd get the low-hanging fruit out the way and tried to log in with basic username and password combinations. Username admin and password admin didn't work, but when they tried the username and password 123456, they struck gold. It worked and they were logged right in with no multi-factor authentication in sight. They'd gained access to some kind of administrator account that they could use to monitor ongoing job applications. It was only a test account though, so it was populated with a bunch of nonsense data about applicants that just didn't exist. But it allowed them to poke around and see how the McHire platform worked. They could flick through job applications, see Olivia's conversations with applicants, and even an applicant's contact information. But through the interface, they could only view applicants for the particular restaurant admin accounts that they were logged into, in this case, Tester Company. In order to pull this contact information about an applicant from the server, the browser shoots off a request in the background to a certain API. The main parameter here is lead ID. This is essentially a particular applicant's ID number. Then the server responds with that applicant's data. But when the researchers messed with that ID number, they discovered that they were able to grab the personal information of anyone who had ever applied for a job at McDonald's, not just at the restaurant they were logged into, but at every McDonald's using McHire. And that ID number increments by 1 for each person. So that's the personal data of over 64 million people that our researchers suddenly had access to. We're talking names, email addresses, phone numbers, and mailing addresses. And whilst that kind of data doesn't sound too sensitive, the opportunity for phishing here is enormous. An attacker would know that that's 64 million people that have applied to work at McDonald's in the past 6 years, since McHire only rolled out in 2019. And many of those people never got the job and are probably still waiting to hear back. So a well-crafted phishing email asking people for their banking information to set them up on payroll or something could be incredibly effective. The McHire platform is made by Paradox.ai, so that's who our researchers tried reaching out to. Emphasis on tried. They couldn't find any security contacts to get in touch with, and amusingly, the Paradox.ai security page just says that security isn't something that you have to worry about. In the end, they did manage to get in contact with Paradox, who resolved the issue, and as far as we know, our researchers were the only ones who managed to come across this vulnerability, so if you have applied to work at McDonald's, your data is safe. Probably. Next up, a man has been arrested in Brazil for facilitating a bank heist of over $100 million. This all began when Brazil's central bank reported that a hacker attack had targeted C&M Software. C&M Software is a company that connects small financial institutions to Brazil's central bank. C&M said that the hack involved the fraudulent use of one of their own employees' credentials, which was then used to access its systems, resulting in hackers draining hundreds of millions of Brazilian reals from the central bank reserve accounts of 6 financial institutions. But how did the hackers gain access in the first place? This guy, Zhao Rauk, one of CNM's own employees, he told investigators that he was approached in a bar by cybercriminals who had clearly done their research. They knew that he had access to CNM and convinced him to sell his credentials to them and help them gain access for 15,000 reals. That's just $2,700. Our insider somehow thought he could evade detection by switching up his mobile phone every 15 days. But when hackers transfer over $100 million using your credentials, it's not hard for investigators to figure out who the source of the breach was, so he was quickly arrested. Brazilian media has gone very deep into the history of Zhao Rauk. The 48-year-old was working at CNM as an IT technician. His LinkedIn profile paints him as someone who expected to be further along in his career given his age, but he's recently retrained and is just giving it his best shot, with the sparkle in my eyes and the willingness of a young boy to give my best, as he puts it. It's unclear if the prospect of just a couple $1,000s from some guy in a bar was enough to convince him to hand over his credentials, or if he was threatened in some way. But as for the stolen coins, authorities say they've managed to freeze half of the cash, but according to crypto investigator Zach XBT, the hackers have already managed to convert somewhere between $30 and $40 million of it to crypto, and police haven't yet been able to identify the masterminds behind the operation. Next up, another spyware app has fallen. CatWatchful markets itself as an app that you can use to spy on your kid's phone, and it has everything you'd expect from a fully featured spyware solution. You can snoop on social media accounts, record calls, monitor GPS locations. There's a long list of features, with plans starting at just $30 per month. The app is Android only and has to be installed manually via an APK, because, would you believe it, Google isn't too keen on letting spyware into the Play Store. Might have something to do with the fact that these kinds of apps are often not just being used by parents to keep tabs on their kids, but by stalkers who want to do stalking. In their FAQ, CatWatchful says that their app is totally invisible and undetectable, which is at least a little suspicious, because why would you have to worry about stealth if you're just trying to keep tabs on your 11-year-old? Since stalkerware, as it's called, has a high potential for creepy behaviour, it's often targeted by hacktivists who carry out, shall we say, unsolicited pen tests. In this case, a security researcher, Eric Daigle, started poking around, and to a limited extent, CatWatchful impressed him. What you're looking at here is the dashboard used to monitor an infected phone. Whilst most stalkerware apps are kind of crappy and only half work, Eric found that CatWatchful features actually worked as promised. But as for his unsolicited pen test, he noticed that the app often talked to a certain PHP API to pull account information, so this is what he focused his efforts on. He discovered that the API was totally unauthenticated, meaning that you could pull a bunch of information on anyone's account armed merely with their phone's IMEI number. But installation dates and last seen dates aren't too interesting, so he dug further, discovering that the database was vulnerable to a classic SQL injection. This kind of attack is pretty easy to exploit and very well known about. It's not often in 2025 you come across one just waiting to be exploited. Eric was able to dump the entire database, which not only reveals the email addresses of every single person using the spyware, but worse, the plain text password of every single person, exposing all in all 62,000 CatWatchful accounts. Eric teamed up with a journalist at TechCrunch who did some more investigating. The database apparently revealed the identity of the developer behind the spyware, but he wasn't too keen on responding to emails or saying if he even planned on actually disclosing the breach to his customers. As of now, CatWatchful's website has disappeared, making this spyware probably the latest in a long line of other commercial spyware tools to be hacked and then simply vanish. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Have a good one.